First of all, I want to welcome everybody here. This is a huge honor for me, and I know everybody here is thrilled. I want to welcome you to today's meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California. You can find the Commonwealth Club on the internet at commonwealthclub.org. I'm Van Jones. I'm the CNN political analyst, your moderator, and fangirl. And it is now my pleasure to introduce you to today's special guest, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, in the house, live and in person. I'm going to hit some of this stuff. I'm not going to get to all of it. Incredible leader, icon, NBA Hall of Fame inductee, columnist for Time Magazine, author of this new book we're going to talk about a little bit, Writing on the Wall, Searching for a New Equality Beyond Black and White. What a year for that to come out. Definitely going to talk about that. The NBA, you can clap for that if you want to, for sure. The NBA's all-time leading scorer today, right now. Forget the rest of them. All-time leading scorer. Six-time champion, writes for the Washington Post, Time Magazine, Time.com, incredible scholar, killed it at the DNC. Did you guys see him at the DNC? Destroyed it. He's got the Skyhook Foundation. He's doing so much stuff, and probably, maybe not known to everybody, but one of the toughest things to get, he has the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which I believe is the highest honor in the United States. So, look, first of all, I just want to say it's an honor. Got a chance to see you briefly a couple times in my life. It's the first time we're going to have a real conversation, so I'm a little nervous. But we were talking backstage, and you mentioned, I said, we don't have that many heroes. We don't have that many legends left, and you went directly to who?
Directly to Emmett Till. I think what happened to. Oh, thank you. I was 8 years old when Emmett Till got murdered in Mississippi, and I didn't understand what happened to him. I didn't know why, and I tried asking my parents about it. They did not have the words to explain it to me, and I couldn't understand it, and it just really made me focus my mind on what is this problem that causes somebody to get murdered like that. And I started paying attention immediately at that moment to what was going on in the civil rights movement. And from 1955 to 1965 was really the climax of it. So it was quite a thing to observe, and it affected me. It made me want to see their goals achieved and eliminate Jim Crow. Of course, we've gotten Jim Crow off the books, but the sentiment that motivates people to have something like Jim Crow is still out there, and we still need to deal with it. And that was the genesis for this book.
Well, speaking of Donald Trump, I was just curious, how you are probably the most beloved Muslim in the world, certainly the most visible throughout the West, and yet we have someone running for office who is telling people, 1 billion people, you're not welcome in the United States. So when you're 8 years old, your life is changed irrevocably by an act of racial bigotry. Now you're sitting here, and I would argue we're seeing religious bigotry. How do you make sense of that?
Well, I think Mr. Trump is basically trying to use people's fear and lack of understanding of what's going on for votes. He's translating that into votes by saying what he says and doing what he does. And it's pitting Americans against each other. And for the longest time, Americans came together and realized how to solve problems. And all of a sudden, that's not working anymore because of a number of different reasons. But one of the things I see that really disappoints me is the fact that the members of Congress decided that they were going to do everything they could to see that the President of the United States was a failure. And why was that? Because he was a black American? I can't get over that. And it bothers me, and I don't like it, and I got to say something about it,
Well, so, you've been outspoken, and I want to get back to some of the things that you've been outspoken about, but since you mentioned needing to speak out, and you mentioned wanting to speak out, we've got some controversy in the news. We have a football quarterback, Colin Kaepernick, who refused to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. My father's a veteran. A lot of people felt that was offensive and also anti-patriotic. You wrote a piece that took a different point of view.
Yeah, I did. I think that what Colin was doing was trying to attract attention to an issue that is very important to him. What I saw that he said was he is fed up with the fact that too many young black people are dying at the hands of police who are reacting to fear and their misunderstanding of the people that they're supposed to protect and serve. And too many of these people are ending up dead for no good reason. And that is a very worthy cause. Now, Colin could have picked another place to make his statement, but he has the power of having so much attention focused on him as the quarterback for the 49ers. So he used that. I think he's right in line with what Mr. Jefferson said when they were putting the Constitution together, that it's important to protect the speech of people who you don't want to hear, because freedom of speech really is the basis for what America is about. And even people who say things that you don't like, you have to fight for their right to say that, because at some point that's going to be you.
And I think about you. I think the last time the country was this divided and this upset was probably in the 1960s. And I think about you, probably being about the same age as Cap, maybe a little bit younger. And there was no precedent. I mean, Cap is standing in precedent. He can follow your example. He can follow Muhammad Ali's example. And you might mention some other examples he's following in. But when you were doing your thing and you were standing up for there was no precedent for what you were doing. What was it that you were leaning on and relying on when you took the stance that you took?
I was relying on what I'd seen Dr. King do, what Medgar Evers did, what the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee did, SNCC. As I was coming up through grade school and high school, I saw them, they risked their lives. They got on buses and rode into the South knowing that they were going to get beaten up and thrown in jail. And they did that so that we could have just the right to vote. That's all we were trying to get, is the right to vote and be treated as equal citizens. Of course, it's gone a lot further than that. But the courage that they showed really is paramount in what motivated me. When I saw John Lewis at the DNC, they asked me to say a few words, and I just remembered back. I remembered seeing them when they were getting ready to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and I knew they were going to get hurt. And I just went back to that time, and I choked up. I couldn't talk, because of what the example I saw in those people that took that horrible beating. But it showed the world exactly how ugly Jim Crow was, and it motivated people to say, hey, we've had enough of Jim Crow. And I'm so thankful. So because of the courage and determination of the people that came before me, I figured all I can do is just follow in their footsteps and try to do my part when I have the chance.
Well, it's now history repeating itself. You see now, you talked about the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, young people taking a stand, trying to do something that would make a difference, make an impact. We don't have the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee anymore, but we do have Black Lives Matter. And we don't have just one Emmett Till. I think this generation feels like it's seeing Emmett Till week after week with these videos. And whereas Emmett Till, it was a shock when the mother let the photograph of the body be printed, I guess, in Jet magazine?
Jet magazine. I remember.
You remember seeing that picture?
I remember
to this
seeing
day.
it.
To this day.
It's one of the most horrible things I ever saw, and I want to know why. What did he do?
And you're sitting here now, decades later, and I can see the pain in your face from something that happened one time in 55. You're 8 years old. You're seeing one picture. What do you think the impact on a generation of African American young people who are seeing in their social feeds on television, scene after scene after scene of African Americans being killed?
I think they've got to be horrified, and they've got to wonder how much their lives are worth. And I think that's a very unfortunate thing that Black Americans have to think like that. But their survival depends on it, and that shouldn't be. But that is the way things are, and until we train our police differently, we can't automatically eliminate all bigots from the police force, but we can train them so that they can overcome their own personal bigotry and shortcomings and become good police officers. That's what we want, and that's what Black Lives Matter should be all about. Yeah. Because we have no other choice. And the police are such an essential part of our democracy.
It's funny because people will often say that the Black Lives Matter movement is anti-police. I always find that very interesting.
They're anti-bad policing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they are.
Anti-bad policing. Yeah. This year. Tell us how you work through those pressures in terms of don't do this from people who you care about and who care about you.
I'll give you an example. After Dr. King was assassinated, we had a demonstration at UCLA. It was just people who wanted to make a statement standing on Bruin Walk. And it happened my junior year at UCLA, 1968. And we're all standing there. We stood there for an hour. And I had at least 4 or 5 different individuals stop where I was standing and tell me that I was getting the opportunity to play in the NBA, and what was I doing in a demonstration about Dr. King's assassination. And their whole attitude about it was because I was having an opportunity to do well in American life, that I needed to know my place and keep my mouth shut and not demonstrate that way.
Well, what's wrong with that? I mean,
what's wrong with it? They don't relate to each other. They're mutually exclusive.
But shouldn't you be grateful?
I am grateful, but the fact that I'm grateful does not mean that the death of Dr. King was not a very horrible thing. It was a murder, and something needed to be done about it, and it had been happening for too long in America, and that's why we protested. But people get that type of mindset where if anybody has an advantage, they're supposed to appreciate that advantage and not rock the boat. And I don't think that Colin has to abide by that. He has to do what his conscience dictates, and I think that's why he made the statement he made.
Now, you did something very courageous at the time. Muhammad Ali, a black Muslim, at that time a militant black nationalist, you talk about refusing to stand up. He refused to go fight. And when he died, everybody said he was the greatest human ever born. But at that time, he was radioactive. And you, Jim Brown, and other top athletes went and sat with him publicly. Why? Because that was not you making a decision about your conscience and what you wanted to do, You're now looking at another man making a decision, and why did you decide to go and sit with the other great esteemed Muslim in American life and lore, Muhammad Ali?
Well, I just had respect for the position that he was taking about the Vietnam War. And he was right. I knew it. For me, it was a no-brainer. I wanted to be involved in it. I wanted to support him and what he was standing for. It made absolute sense to me.
Now, okay, so we're sitting here all these years later, and you say this so calm. It could not have been an easy decision. You must have had managers, lawyers, agents, yo mama, somebody did not think this was a great idea. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're you're not wrong. You're right. That's what I meant to say. And I had to make a choice then. But for me, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I knew that he was right, and he was willing to take the hit. He's the one that lost the opportunity, the financial opportunities, not being able to fight for a couple of years, and he didn't care. He really didn't care. You know, if having the opportunity to fight meant that he had to show some support for our presence in Vietnam, he was going to just forego that and go his own way. And I had ultimate respect for him.
Your commitment to the Jewish community, to anti-fascist politics, meant that in 1968, you did not go to the Olympics. Is that correct?
Right.
Help me understand that. Tell that story. This is an amazing story of solidarity between people of different faiths.
Well, the president of the American Olympic Committee was a man named Avery Brundage. And during the 1936 Olympics, he's the one that told Jewish athletes that they could not compete in Berlin because it was going to make Hitler angry. And I had a chance to go to the Olympics under his supervision, and I wasn't going anywhere under his supervision. That was just...
You know, I was so surprised and impressed and moved by the passion that you have for gender equality. I don't think people know what a strong stance you've taken on pay, equity, tough on men who don't seem to get it. I certainly agree with you, but it's not often that you see men taking it on the way you do. Why?
It's important.
Why?
And I see the negative results of it when I look where the majority of the Muslims in the world live and the way they treat women. Okay, the Quran says that women should be able to choose their husbands, that they should be able to petition for divorce, that they should be able to inherit and own property. And most importantly, the Quran says that they are partners to men. And if you go into any part of what is called the Muslim world, those rights are not acknowledged. And this is out of the Quran, something that these people who say they are so Islamic, they don't honor this. And they're doing a disservice to their faith, and they don't acknowledge that issue. It's horrible, and it shouldn't be happening. And chauvinism takes a different form here in America, but the glass ceiling where women don't get paid what they should get paid, and it's more difficult for them to advance because they're women. They get charged because their clothes are different from male clothes, so that the people at the dry cleaners charge them more money. This is absurd, and it's just discrimination, and it needs to stop.
Well, listen, that's given the national political climate, what advice would you give to the Muslim American community? There may be a number of people listening or even here in this room who are Muslim American. The community has become a political football in this election. What words might you have for the Muslim American community?
Well, I would tell any Muslim out there, just give everything that you can give to your country, because our country needs it. And the fact that you can be open enough to let people understand what you believe in, the more you do that, the more open you are, so that people can see that Muslims are not here to destroy America. We're here to add to it. When they can see that, I think we'll tear down all the confusion and misunderstanding that goes back and forth, because when they see people like ISIS and all that hatred, this is not Islam. When they go into a Muslim community and see what it's all about, and see it's about family and it's about learning how to live in harmony with everybody else, I think that's where we achieve what we want to achieve here in America. And I'm all for it, and I hope that the Muslim community sees that. So many Muslims have volunteered to help our police agencies and the armed forces deal with understanding the cultures that are promoting all this hatred and barbaric practices like ISIS. And I think that really is going to be the crux of it, just by being open and letting people know who you are. They don't have to hide. They just have to be themselves, and we'll overcome the ignorance and suspicion that that's kind of grasped everybody.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah, thank you.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Thank you very much.